this miserable, interminable year that we're all having. And I'm delighted today to introduce Marisa Acocella, whose book, we're going to be looking at today. We're looking at the Big She Bang, the history of the universe according to God the Mother.
The herstory of the universe.
Her
story. We've had enough of history, haven't we? It's been
yes, it has. It's time for her story.
Her story.
It's time for her story.
Right. I should also point out that Marisa is the author of the clever and amusing Cancer Vixen book as well, and so that's another way that why we're doing her on Cancer Book Club. So I guess Marisa, can you tell us a bit about the evolution of Cancer Vixen and how it led to this book that you're doing now?
Okay, so
coming out on Monday, isn't it? 17th.
What's that?
Your book comes out on the 17th, November 17th?
Comes out on the 17th. Pub's
Correct.
on. Yeah. So, okay, so Cancer Vixen, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was on deadline for Glamour magazine. I had a monthly comic strip in there. And when I told my editor, her second response was, do you want to write about it? The first obviously being, are you okay? What's your diagnosis, et cetera. So then I thought about it. And I thought, yeah, it would be great to do a graphic treatment of my treatment, right? Of my cancer treatment. Actually, oh my gosh, I just broke my own rule. I have this rule throughout the whole cancer experience. I would never put my in front of cancer. This is the first time I did it. I'm going to unsay that, right?
We have to undo that.
Do not do that. Never. No, because I never wanted to put my in front of cancer. I never wanted to own it.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep it off me and put it on the page, which,
right.
Whenever you go through any kind of traumatic event, it's always good to journal and get it out of your system and put it on the page and let it live there and not in you. That's how I feel about it. With anything, I mean, maybe we should all start journaling about, this crazy 2020 year. But when I was asked, do you want to write about having cancer? I thought, yeah. And I was actually going to call Cancer Vixen breast case scenario. And I was like, and I told my friend Bob Morris, who at the time was a writer for the New York Times, and I was really depressed. I had like greasy hair. I was walking down Hudson River Park along the Hudson River with ratty sneakers, ripped everything. And he said, and look at you, babe. You look like a victim. Where's my vixen? And then he said, you're the daughter of a shoe designer. Look at those ratty sneakers. Look at the way you look. He's like, that's what you should call it. You should call it Cancer Vixen. So I went back home and I literally drew the Cancer Vixen, and she was on my drawing board that entire cancer year. And my line was, Cancer, I'm going to kick your ass and do it in killer platform heels. So that was like the genesis of Cancer Vixen. And I feel like this whole thread, basically with everything I've ever written, has always been about female empowerment and empowering women. And I did it with Antenna, which was the book that came out after Cancer Vixen. I wrote about how a woman who was a gossip columnist gets into a car accident, has a head injury, and goes up to the universe and meets her higher self, Super Ann, her empowered higher self. And she learns some lessons and comes back to Earth and lives a changed life. With the Big Shebang, I found out about all these stories about women throughout time that some of them were vilified, some of them were written out, some of them were marginalized, some of them were sidelined, some of them were edited out, some of them were misnamed. And like, take, for instance, God the Mother, right? Okay. Who's God the Mother? Did you realize like God the Mother is actually the Holy Ghost? She was Holy Ghosted. God the Mother was Holy Ghosted in the Bible, which I call the book written by a bunch of men about a bunch of men.
Right, exactly.
Right?
I love that. Written by a bunch of men about a bunch of
About
men.
a bunch of men. Right.
I run into this all the time in my business life. I'm forced to conform to a very male view of the world to communicate. And
Right.
my world is so much bigger. And it really drives me crazy. I mean, even simple things like search, they're so hierarchical and linear. Whereas if a woman were to design a search program, it would be full of emotion and different feelings and words and things than what we have right now. And the male half the population can't even see that.
I know. It's like it's in their DNA not to, I think, actually. I mean, I'm not going to put men down because I actually, even though sometimes they deserve it, but, but, you know, that's another aspect of the book, and that is the balance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And I think because women have been, we have been, you know, systemic racism. Well, what's bigger than that is systemic sexism,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so, and that basically started, and I have it in the book actually, with Adam and Eve, right? I mean, the fact that we're told that Eve came out of Adam's rib is absolutely ludicrous. And it's 100% untrue. Because if you go back to the Apocrypha and you go back to the Nag Hammadi books, right? And they say that Adam was molded into clay and the demigod tried to breathe life into him, but the demigod had no soul. So God the mother sends down Eve, right? And Eve was the anthropos. Eve had the soul. Eve breathed life into Adam, and she animated Adam because she was it. I mean, Eve was like the doctor, the physician of Adam, the mother of Adam, the mother of the entire human race. So Eve is a great evolutionary. And really, when you look at Eden, it was kind of like an Eden prison. They were stuck there. And when Eve took a bite out of the apple, Eve was basically freeing them from under the grips of the demigod.
I really enjoyed that reconstruction in the book and the images that go with it. I thought those were, you know, just it turned the whole Eden story on its ear, and it was just a totally different way of conceptualizing the origin story. So I just found it super clever and interesting the way you had.
Thank you.
That. And with the whole just as you're describing it, but I guess for our listeners, you have to view it. You have to see the images that go with it. I don't know if there's might be possibly in part of this to maybe even if you have something at home, just kind of show us some of the images, even if you just have them.
Sure. I mean, I definitely can. Okay, here's the cover. Yeah, the big shebang. And I was talking about Eve and how Eve was sent down from heaven, or what they called it back then.
Let's to the Eve section. Show us your Eve page.
Yes, the pleroma. So here is basically, okay, this is God the Mother sending down the divine spark, right? Okay, and then you'll see that right here, right? Okay, a drop of divine light encoded with the human genome fell. And when it landed in the water, a luminous androgynous human appeared who fashioned themselves into a woman in her mother Sophia's image. Her name is Zoe, which means life, but you know her as Eve. And Eve was enlightened. And legend has it that there really are graves somewhere in the Middle East, right, where Eve and Adam lived, and they were about 9 feet tall, and they were less dense, and they were enlightened. But the reason they were enlightened is because of Eve. So what happened was, when Eve first saw Adam abandoned in the mud, right, she wanted to help him. And her first thought was she wanted to help him. Her second thought was, he's so handsome. Then she infused him then I infused him, she says, with my light, because Eve's doing the talking. And she says, Adam, rise. And then Adam says, when he wakes, it is you who have given me life. So you will be called mother of the living because your spark of light has given me life. And then Eve says, you and me and our future family. So yeah. And then they're spied by the archons, the demigod, and they're jealous of this beautiful, luminous woman who's given Adam life, something they did not have the ability to do because they didn't have a soul. And they created the divide and conquer humanity master plan, which was the beginning of the systemic sexism, right?
That we all endure today.
Yes, exactly. Which is why there's less funding for breast cancer, right? I mean, it all leads into, it's all one big thing.
It's all of a piece. And I guess that's what I found really struck me about the story, is that if we start from the assumption that there's a patriarchy that's going to operate to suppress women's voices, we see it, you make it clear, day one, this civilization, that civilization, the Egyptians, that, you take it through the various cultures and the female deities represented in various historical religions, historical cultures, and show how those women initially were to be respected, but ultimately were kicked out as goddesses because they're women. And so it was, to me, that was really a point that I took away from the book, was just how ubiquitous this is. It's everywhere, it's all the time. And of course, anybody knows, as a student history knows that, but it was the difference, I think, in your book is that it's told so cleverly and with those brilliant images that really have a little insouciance to them. There's a lot of sort of sassy combat. The women and the gods say funny things that you aren't expecting gods to say.
Well, I mean, you know what? Here's the thing, right? So if you're doing a book about goddesses, right? They've got to have an attitude. They've got to be the ultimate divas, right?
Yes, exactly. And they were. I just thought the self-knowledge of the goddesses and also the sort of funny, snarky modern tone that they sometimes adopted. I just thought that was hilarious.
I think one of the things that catches your eye is the sheer volume of stories across cultures, as you were saying, Robin, that exist that paint women in a really terrible light. It's absolutely stunning. And they're just integral to all of these cultures.
It is. I mean, it's a global thing that started basically from day one, when Eve basically breathed life into Adam. And that's how it started. And it's still going on today, even though women are 51% of the population. We've got the majority, and it's still, I think hopefully things will change, but it's not going to happen unless we demand it to happen, I think. But again, I still feel like the whole story with, let's say, Mary Magdalene and Jesus, right? That is a story of balance. And I think they, to me, are like the archetypal power couple.
Yes, that was also very clever. Now, I was going to ask, I know it hasn't come out quite yet, but have you received any kind of upsetness or pushback from people saying, well, that's not how, my religion says this, and
I haven't really gotten
any kind of bigotry around the religious aspect?
I haven't gotten that yet, but I'm waiting for it.
You're going to get trolled, and it. So
I think I'm going to. I probably will. I'm waiting for it. That's fine. I can handle it.
On the religious front, and the fact that you're a woman, you'll be trolled by some man at some point because you're female. That's it.
Yeah, I know I will. I mean, I definitely got some major eye roll on something that ran in the New Yorker, a page out of this book, The History of Male Hysteria. This page right here, I'll show you. Because, men can't really see how, like some men, not all men, don't really think that they're fault at this, but this was the brief history of menstrual hysteria.
Oh, that was
yeah, and how basically at first men had a fearful awe of menses blood, right? And not knowing their part in creation, thought it coagulated into a baby. I mean, like this whole page here makes them look kind of silly, right? I mean, things like the law of Manu state that if a man nears a menstruating woman, they say, I'll lose my wisdom, I'll lose my eyesight, I'll lose my strength, right? Like right there. I mean, it's kind of like, it's ridiculous, the
Yeah.
things that they thought back then.
What kind of research did you have to do for the book?
I read pretty much everything. I mean, I did a lot of research. I read probably about 160 books. So many articles online. My research spanned the Nag Hammadi stories, to the Divine Feminine Oracle cards, to Project Camelot, which is a website and videos. I read everything I could possibly read. Stanley Kramer, his stories on Samaria. I read a lot on Inanna, and I wrote her like 10 times. This was a crazy story. Did you see the whole Inanna thing about?
No.
Okay, so Inanna was basically this goddess, and I'll show you who she is right here. Right, that's Inanna.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a god. She had her own boat of heaven, basically a UFO, because she was Sumerian, and that's what they call their boats of heaven. They flew in the skies. And among her many titles, she is the most powerful goddess in the Mesopotamian pantheon. And she says, what other god comes close to me? None. Then you go on and find out that she has her own temple, right? And this is called Iana, right here,
Wow.
right? And it was the temple of heaven. And she had all these goddesses in Uruk and Samaria, and all the goddesses, or priestesses actually, they had the power in Samaria, right? Which is really, okay, that's cool, don't you think?
Very.
Like, that's super cool, right? But then when you go on and find out more about her, they had this ritual called Heroes Gamos, where a priestess would be chosen to take Inanna's place, and then a man would be chosen to be the king. So it'd be the priestess and the king. And then you would find out, like I found out later on, that the man was sacrificed.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So basically that's why, because I was like, why does it, how come nobody really knows about Inanna? But I mean, if you're going to sacrifice a man, that's probably why nobody really talked about it. Inanna, right? But anyway, I do address that in this book. I mean, God the Mother kind of does take her down for that. Yeah. So I mean, there's good goddesses, and there's like,
Well, that was part of the humor, is the goddesses relating to each other, or
yeah.
But that part was quite clever.
But there's got.
I was just I want to make sure that we get to this. So I'll just say it before I forget with my chemo brain. Can you tell us about how people can access your book? How do they get it?
They could get it. I could give you a link. My publisher, I mean, you could buy it on Amazon, but I also like supporting independent bookstores.
Yeah.
I could send you a link if you like after this.
Sure, we can tweet that out. But you have an Amazon.
I do have an Amazon
yeah.
page. Yeah. You can definitely get it on
COVID times, I don't know if people are going into bookstores as much as they.
Yeah,
But
you could. Yeah. You could also order it at Word Bookstore.
Okay.
Wordbookstores.com. You could order it through them.
And you're on Twitter as well, correct?
I'm on Twitter. Yes, I'm on Instagram.
What's your handle?
Marisa Acocella.
Okay, the whole word.
Globally, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure your various fans.
Thank you.
More fans after today, and in a few days when it comes out. So I just want to make sure the fans.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
I just love this book. Tell me, if we had more presence in this male world, how do you think we'd change it? How would things be different?
Well, I would hope that there would be less war, right? That would help. Maybe we take a different approach to health. Maybe we would rely more on what we could get from Mother Earth and her different remedies than chemicals that we put into our bodies. I mean, maybe that would change, and that would be a good change. I think that we would become more intuitive and not trust what we read and trust our gut more, because we'd be more connected. I would think as a divine feminine, we'd be connected more to our divinity. I mean, that is a definite thing that I feel, to me, that's a big danger, that we're getting less and less connected to the above and more connected to like to our, handhelds or our computers and what we read, and less reliant on our own instincts.
Yeah.
So I think that would definitely change, because women are much more intuitive. I mean, we react with I think we're much more heartfelt. And that's the other thing. I mean, Mother Earth, right? What's the Earth an anagram for? Heart.
That's
right?
true. It is.
That's really true. And I think that, we would honor our Mother Earth more. And I think the very face of the planet would change. We wouldn't be, I mean, in the book, I talk about the Me Too movement, but who had the biggest Me Too moment of all? Mother Earth, by the patriarchy, the bro patriarchy, right? Look what we've done to her.
Yeah, she's raped every day, Mother Earth.
She's raped every day, every second of the day.
Did you see Jennifer Lawrence in that movie Mother, where that's a whole metaphor for Mother Earth, and it's just like total calamity all the time. So,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's the same theme. The idea that.
Oh, interesting.
No, when I see what poor stewards we have been of this earth, it saddens me so much, because I've always enjoyed the outdoors. For me, some of the most meaningful experiences I've ever had have been flying. I fly sailplanes, and to soar over mountain ranges and see these spines go down the earth, and to feel the air and the lift and the sun coming in, and having to navigate using invisible forces of lift, if you will. It is just mind-boggling. And I feel a very deep connection to the earth. And when I see the way we've abused our home, it really does trouble me. And I wonder, where do we go from here? Because there never are, this isn't black and white. There are no clear answers. There's no, hardcore right or wrong, but how do we evolve away from the situation we've created to a healthier, kinder, more sustainable model? Most of all, I think we need a sustainable way of living, which we do not have. The way we're living now is not sustainable.
I agree with you. So I agree with you 100%. I also, there's a whole thing about the matrix and the ley lines in the book, right? And how there were goddess temples on the ley lines that were taken over, destroyed, or taken over by different entities like the church and government, etc. But what happened was the goddess temples had snakes in them. And like, there's this whole thing about inversion and how our whole history has been inverted. And the snakes actually were the connection between humanity and Earth. Like you were talking about veins, right? The snakes would actually let you know when what was going on energetically, if there was going to be a storm coming on. So there were a lot of snakes in the goddess temples. And so, and we were also connected with the earth at the ley lines, and the ley lines have been taken over, which is kind of an interesting theory as well. Like Stonehenge is on a ley line. The pyramids at Giza are on ley lines.
Interesting. Do any ley lines run through Santa Fe? Because this is well, the reason I ask is this has always been recognized, this whole area of northern New Mexico has always been recognized as having a lot of spiritual depth, and people feel it here.
I think probably, I don't know, I would have to look, but I would bet that Santa Fe is like the whole city's probably on a ley line, because I've always felt, I've never been to Santa Fe. I've always wanted to go, and I've always heard, it just seems like such a mystical and beautiful place, like very energetically healing. There's a lot of, my assumption is there's a lot of mother energy there.
That's what they say of the mountains here, that these are, a more feminine mountain. And so as you move up the mountain ranges, and into the Rockies, you're getting into a much more masculine set of mountains. And that's
Yeah.
very visually, that's just obvious.
Yes.
That's so interesting. Rockies, like their very name, Rocky. It's like that's very masculine in itself, right?
Well, then, it's interesting when you drive into New Mexico, whether it's from Arizona, from Texas, or Colorado, you can almost feel the difference when you come into the state. There
Mhm.
is, you're agreeing with me, Rob. You were down here last year, weren't you?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
2 years
not,
ago?
not last year. No, I have been to Santa Fe in the past, and I remember just what you're talking about. It was, I went from Albuquerque drove to Santa Fe, and just the geography on the way, I'll never forget it as long as I live. It was most amazing. It's amazing.
Well, we must have feminine energy here. So your
Yeah.
book can tell well here.
I bet it would actually.
What's next for you?
I probably will. I'm actually working on a sequel to this, and taking it into present time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm doing that. I still am doing different articles. I still am cartooning for the New Yorker, so I'm working on that. That's a deadline every Tuesday. But really, I feel very passionate about what these stories here. I love them, and I think the world should know who these women really are.
Do you see this book? Would you say, who is your audience for this book? Would you say it's all women, all girls?
I would say mostly women and enlightened men who would want to know about the other half of humanity. I think to me, ultimately, the message of this book is of unity and love. It's about the she-evolution, love and the she-evolution, and it's about balancing the masculine and the feminine, and making Earth a better place. I mean, I wrote it, basically, it starts out with Mother Earth saying, you've got to do something. We're either going to ascend or we're going to descend, right? We are at the critical point right now of the planet.
No return, in fact, they said today. It was yesterday.
Somebody said that today?
That was yesterday. They published a paper saying that we're past the point of no return on climate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We can't go, it's too late now already.
Oh, I don't know that I believe that, but
I don't think I believe that.
I just saying it was published yesterday. I haven't evaluated that evidence, but anyway,
all right.
To your point, that Mother Earth is in distress for sure.
But
Mother Earth is in distress.
What I love about the book is it is overwhelmingly about the power, I think, of love and light.
It is.
And
absolutely.
It's an incredibly uplifting book. And it's a book that speaks to love, humanity, kindness, all the wonderful attributes that you can possibly assign to the 51% of the population.
Right.
What I enjoyed the most is sort of the uncovering of those stories of the different goddesses and who they were, and the remake of their evolution, their rise and fall, and the kind of forces involved. But what struck me the most was the sense of humor in the book too. So in addition to it being inspirational and values driven around protection of the earth and respect for women in society, I just love the humor. I just thought there was these little clever notes all around. It was like watching the vampires. It was just that was the part I liked the most. It was just how clever, little clever utterances that the little girl would say, or the mother would say, or even the goddesses, when their nose was out of joint about something, they would say, something. I just thought it was clever.
Thank you. I mean, I thought, like, take Isis, for instance, when Plutarch says, like, she was a goddess in mourning, and Isis is basically just vaporized him with her eyes. Like, because how dare he speak about her? What does he know about Isis, right? He's again, another man writing like our stories.
Yes, and that was the other takeaway point, is about how what's the locus of history? History is written by the victors, as they say, men being the victors. And we, through your book, we see systematically for centuries, there's been a sabotage of
there's been absolutely
throughout the whole through human history and today.
Well, take like the myth of Sophia, for instance, right? Like we all know that God's only son was Jesus, but what if, and we didn't really realize that God the Mother is the Holy Spirit, right?
I've
But
heard
did
that
we even,
before.
what's that?
I heard it before. I've heard it in Catholic.
You've heard that God the Mother was the Holy Spirit?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. But what about the divine daughter, Sophia?
No,
Like
no.
That is the most suppressed story
yeah.
of humanity, because that is basically the arc of the female when you think about it.
And when I think about if our religions had captured that perhaps there would be more respect for women. That because the story that's put out now is like men, Cain and Abel. Forget there's no discussion about Adam and Eve's daughters at all.
Right, at all. I mean, Nuria, she was like help. I mean, she was fierce. She basically, I mean, if I could give her a mantra, and I almost put this in the book, and I kind of wish I did, which was sticks and stones will break my bones, but my voice will always save me. Right. So, I mean, Nuria was like, she is the patron saint of the Me Too movement, because she called him out and saved herself. Right. I mean, she was really powerful, and she almost saved humanity 3 times, because we know who she was married to. And ironically enough, Nuria was mentioned in the book written by about a bunch of men, AKA the Bible, right? She was mentioned 5 times, but not through, her name was never,
that's
they
right.
never said who her name was.
The narrative around it never evolved. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, she was nameless, but her name Nuria means beautiful fire. And we know why, because she almost saved humanity 3 times by burning down the ark with her flames coming out of her mouth.
Wow. Well, I guess we're kind of getting to the end of our time now. We around half an hour around in there. So what I just want to express how much fun it was to meet you and to see your. It's more than reading; it's experiencing, because you get the rich visuals that go with it. And that I haven't even spoken about that aspect about how astonishing your talent is as far as the
beautiful book.
Images.
So many levels.
Yeah.
Well, I really had a lot of fun doing it, I have to say. I mean, for 2 years, I basically slept, and drank, goddesses, and had goddess books in bed with me, and they were very territorial. So I didn't date for 2 years. So
I have a little niece who's a budding feminist, and I would really love to get her your book for. I'm sure she would find it.
How old is she?
Oh, she's about 10 now, I think. So just the right age to be imbibing this kind of thing. So she's all good.
I was reading it to my nieces. I have twin nieces, and they're 11, and they're like, they can't wait to get their hands on it. So I'm going to see her in a few days.
Just thrilling. It would be so empowering to little girls to.
Yeah, thank you.
That there's another way to conceive of history and conceive of the stories
it shakes up a lot of things that people think, and I think that's always good when you can shift your paradigm a little bit and start seeing things anew, because we need to see things anew, I think. And
even if people are like rigid about, no, I believe what I have my religion, it's this, and I don't believe anything. It's the book is still fun. It's fun and creative, no matter what your religious perspectives are.
Thank you.
It's enjoyable just from the perspective of, in the same way that reading about Greek myths is enjoyable. Wow, what an interesting thing it says about life. I found the book to be, as we say, so celebratory of life and key values like protection of the planet that I obviously espouse. That I just it was my view that you don't have to. If you're a Muslim and you want to read this book, you're not harming yourself spiritually by reading it. It is, you got to treat it as a mind expansion delight, and that's what how
Thank you. Well, I did have a Muslim saint here, Saint Rabia of Basra, right? She was a Sufi saint of Islam.
Look at that.
Yeah, and I really just wanted to be all inclusive
Yes.
with women, you know, make this like a global thing where in everybody was represented.
Yes.
through
The
everybody.
the breadth was amazing. The
Thank
cultural
you.
breadth and the historical breadth was
So hold the book up again so we can see it.
Yeah, hold it up.
Here it
hold
is, the big
It's just
bang.
fantastic. Everybody needs to read this book, male or female, no matter what religion. It is just, it's a hoot. It's beautiful, and it
Thank
will
you.
make you think.
We'll
It'll
make
make
you
you
think.
stop and think.
And it'll make you
Thank
laugh.
you.
It'll make you laugh and it'll make you think. It's hard. Those are two incredible qualities in a book.
Thank you for saying that. That's really what I wanted to achieve.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
and
you. My
I'll just
pleasure.
Go ahead and mention that we have we'll have one more cancer book club coming up in the month of December with the book Noseworthy, around a woman who lost her nose to cancer, and will be talking to us about the experience of that. And so that's next month, and we'll see our audience again then.
In the meantime, be safe and be well.
Very good.